Joseph Vail was born in 1952 in Haverton, Pennsylvania. He grew up in a large family with 9 brothers and sisters, was passionate about sports and music, and had a bit of a wild streak in him.
There's stories of a kid who was the altar boy, but who also was out gambling on the side. You know, it's like, where's Joe? Oh, I think he's over at the sidewalk, you know, where they have the craps game going, which we were all shocked.
Joe attended Widener University, where he decided to study law. At the time, immigration law was not his focus. After graduation, he began to work in a VISTA program in Philadelphia dealing with community poverty issues. It was there that he was introduced to the field of immigration law. One of his first experiences in litigation was with the landmark case Plyler versus Doe.
Joe was involved in Plyler versus Doe, an important case that went to the U.S. Supreme Court involving the rights of undocumented school children to attend public institutions in Texas. As it happens, I'm on leave in New Mexico this semester writing a book about the case, and so I think of Joe almost on a daily basis.
Joe worked for 3 years as a legal aid attorney for the Gulf Coast Legal Foundation and for IUTA in Washington, D.C. Upon his move to Houston, he set up a private practice representing non-citizens in deportation proceedings, many of which were taken on a pro bono basis.
Nobody could figure out how he made a living. He had a car and he had a place to live, but nobody was exactly sure how because he worked pro bono so often and so much.
Very humble, and he was always really frugal. I remember that.
His pants, his jeans, he had those things for like 30 years.
Yes.
Well, you know,
Very
they're still
simple.
going. They didn't have any holes in them, you know, so they were still good.
In 1987, Joe became involved in an effort to recruit and train volunteer attorneys to represent Haitian refugees transferred to the Houston INS Detention Center, out of which grew the Houston Refugee Pro Bono Project.
He came up to me at lunchtime and started to see if I would take a case, and I told him I'd be interested, but I'm a boat lawyer, an admiralty lawyer, and I know nothing about asylum law, certainly nothing about immigration law. And he said, well, I'll tell you what, I'll make a deal with you. I've got some maritime cases. I've got some clients that come in that are stowaways from time to time, and I actually need some maritime advice. So if I'll give you a call, and if you'll help me out with that maritime advice, you can call me, I swear. Whenever I would call, or later whenever I would send him an email, almost no matter what time it was, he would get back with me in minutes with the answer, and it was always right on the money, just right on target.
In 1995, Joe decided to accept an offer to be an immigration judge in Houston, a move that initially surprised many that knew him.
I was a little surprised, frankly, that he had decided to become an immigration judge, but on reflection, I thought that was a very healthy thing. I think Joe, we talked about it, and he felt that he could do a greater good by being on the bench and by setting an example and having a balanced view, and that's the type of judge he was.
At first, he wants to do it because he thought he can help more in a different level, helping, always thinking about the immigrants. And he told me that the reason he decided not to continue, it was hard for him because he feels so bad when he has to deny the case.
Being a person came through because Joe is, he's full of compassion and full of empathy. And if he denies an undocumented alien, he would often go to his chambers and cry. Isn't that a person full of compassion? And I think that's what drew him out of the judgeship.
In 1999, Joe was recruited by the University of Houston Law Center to both teach immigration law and to create a new immigration clinic that would offer pro bono legal aid and mentor a select group of students for work in this complex area of the law.
The thing about Joe was that he took to teaching like a duck takes to water. He had not really aspired to go into teaching. He'd been in private practice, which is much more hands-on, and he was temperamentally suited to do that. But the kind of listening skills that Joe had and the kind of technical expertise that he had lent themselves, of course, to teaching. And he turned out to be a remarkably good teacher.
The students are allowed to practice before the immigration judges. And he would not handle the case. He'll let his students handle the case. And you could see the marks or the characteristics of Joe in the way the students present their case.
Because Joe's a big baseball fan, you need a farm system. And you need to be able to bring your lawyers up through the farm system and not just throw them straight into the majors. And that's what he did. He is principally responsible for, a significant number of the immigration lawyers that are in Texas now, and particularly here in Houston.
Joe's personal life was also lived very fully. In 1985, he met Tony Alvarenga at an immigrant shelter called Casa Juan Diego, and they would be together for many years.
When he met me in 1985, my two daughters were not with me because in 1983, their father came to Houston and took them with him without letting me know. And I did not have no idea where they were. And then he said, Tony, I will find your daughters. He checked every single school in the United States, finding them. Finally, he did. We went there and we brought them back to Houston. From that day, Joe became a father.
He was a good dad, and he did more for us than some dads do for their biological children.
Yeah. Any problem that you had, he would listen to you, and then he would just make it right. He would make it better. He would, somehow guide you to the right decision.
The mystery with Joe Vail is, how did he break the 24-hour barrier? Nobody can figure that out. And when did he sleep? Because he was helping so many people, not just the immigrants who were his clients, but also the lawyers who were attempting to help with these particular cases.
When Joe fell ill and he needed to be the recipient of others' help, not much changed about his outlook on life.
He taught the last class. He was very ill, but he taught the last class and drove himself to the airport after the class, which he probably wasn't well enough to do, and probably my sense of what I could do. And I got to spend some time with him in Chicago when he was at the hospital there, and the whole time he was asking about how is so-and-so, if it's an attorney we both knew, or how are you? There was one of the nurses who came in. He's like, here's this nurse, I've been talking to her, and I think she's from Central America, and I think she has somebody that doesn't have their papers. We gave our numbers out in the hospital to the nurse in Chicago because Joe had already kind of figured out what the next step was for her.
It's not possible to fill his shoes, but one of his legacies is that it is continuing, and and immigrants are continuing to get help. They're continuing to be represented in court, and that wouldn't have happened without Joe Vail.